league. He'd really done a great job. So it's just disappointing that he, can't start off tomorrow. But, we really are pretty optimistic with, how hard he's worked to get himself back to playing. I think to your point, we're probably going to be a little bit undersized in that position. But I also think when you look around the league, in those positions, a lot of those guys have been incredibly versatile. I think that we have the flexibility there with our roster to move different guys down there. How big we can play, I'm not sure. But, also I think, last year we were so big in that position that sometimes we needed to be a little bit smaller. But overall, I think it's going to have to be done, the rebounding, by committee. It can't just rely on Vooch, or our power forward, but we've got to do it collectively as a group.
Artūras, just in general, we haven't really had a chance to talk to you much since all the you can see I'm out of practice too. Since all the roster construction that you undertook this summer, how do you feel you improved your talent, and where do you think the biggest impact will be with the additions of DeRozan and Ball and Caruso?
Well, I think that we have a lot of talented guys in the locker room. I think we also brought high character guys, and there's a lot of excitement, but we also understand that we're going to have to get in the gym and have to work. We haven't seen those guys practice or play together, so it's going to take time for them to get to know each other, to find that team chemistry. But again, we're optimistic, and we believe in this group, and we believe in Billy, so I think we got a lot of positivity going into the season.
Cheryl Raystow, WBEZ. Billy, what's it like to have all these different parts now to put together for the season?
Well, I think it started off with, AK and Mark and their staff. They were pretty busy, in the beginning, of August when, the draft was coming and then free agency started, and they worked incredibly hard. And I really was, grateful and appreciative of being part of that process all the way through. As our AK mentioned, I'm excited, about this, but at the same point too, I think the challenge for us, is going to be, how well can we gel and mesh together, in throughout training camp. I understand that, when you turn the roster over as much as we did, there's going to be some ups and downs, through this period, and that's to be expected. But I do feel really, really good getting a chance in August and September to spend time with a lot of these new guys, just in terms of their competitive makeup, their character, their experience. I think they understand that that's going to be a challenge, and something that's equally as important is, how well do we, all come together as a team, and, how well can we fulfill roles and play to our roles, and, can we continue to play to an identity or a style that is going to be conducive to the group. So, the work and that really starts tomorrow. So I'm excited to get to work with these guys, and excited about, the opportunity that's in front of us. But I still feel at the same point, because we've never, as Artūras mentioned, practiced or even played a game together, to sit there and to speculate how smooth the transition is going to be, I really don't know. But I do feel pretty confident about the quality of people that are in the locker room.
Yeah, for Artūras, what percentage of players and coaches are fully vaccinated?
Well, I don't know the exact percentage, but it's going to be not 100%, but we are getting pretty close.
Casey?
Billy, obviously your job as a coach is always to maximize the roster that management gives you. But last year when you came into this year, on paper had a pretty young roster, and while you still have some young pieces, they've also obviously added some veteran pieces with DeMar and Vucevic even last year. How does that change expectations for you and your staff moving forward into this season?
Well, I think the one thing that's a positive going into training camp with this new group is, I think one of the premiums that AK and his staff put a premium on, and just in conversation, was a basketball IQ. DeRozan is a very, very high IQ player. I think Lonzo's a very high IQ player. Caruso's a high IQ player. Getting a chance to work with Vooch last year, high IQ player. So I think that is something that's good. We got guys that have, I think, a really, really good feel of how to play. I do think last year, one of the things, there was a lot on Zach's plate from a ball handling and creating and generating points in offense for us, that we've now, I think, created a situation where we have multiple handlers, multiple guys that can put the ball on the floor. But listen, I think on any team, there's going to be sacrifices, right? And I would just say this, Zach was as good and as efficient of a scorer as anybody in the league last year. But you're also bringing in Vooch, and you got DeMar. Those guys can score too. So, how do we best function where we're efficient? And that may require some guys not scoring as many points as maybe they did, if it's for the benefit of the team, and the team's going to be better because of that. So, I feel confident because of the IQ that we can play selfishly. It's going to be, how do these guys and how quickly can these guys coexist playing with each other, right? Like, DeMar is used to playing a certain way for most of his career. So is Zach, so is Vooch. But, all of them gelling and meshing together with Lonzo, with Alex Caruso, with Patrick, that's going to be the biggest thing. And that's what, I'm excited about going into training camp. There's going to be a lot of work in front of us, but I think, like I said earlier, the quality of people that we have, I think they'll stay to it and keep working to continue to improve and get better.
Joe, go ahead.
Oh, this question for Artūras. Joe Colley, Sun-Times. How are you viewing the Zach thing, man? Obviously, we all know he's due a big payday. Do you look at it as, we've accommodated you by getting pieces around you to better improve you because we're shown, we want you to stay? Or do you view it as, we've got you these pieces, you need to prove to us that you're worth that commitment now?
Well, the one thing that we know is that we committed to Zach. We want him to be in Chicago for a very long time. I think trade deadline and free agency moves kind of proved that. And he has a great relationship with Billy, good relationship with me. I think, can't wait to see how the players that we added to the team going to work together and gel. And that's about it. We feel really good about Zach and about the season.
Sam Smith.
Thank you for introducing me, Matt. For Billy Donovan, this is almost a third iteration of a team. You started, as Casey said, with a young team, then Vucevic came and you sort of slowed down a little bit. Have you ever been through anything like this, turnover over in a short period? And how do you anticipate, you talked about how you wanted to play last season, faster, up-tempo. How did you anticipate playing with now a more veteran team?
Yeah, I think it's something I've obviously given a lot of thought to. I think because I thought the way after the trade deadline, with Daniel Tice and as great of a year as Thad had, for us, and, Vooch and even Lowry having to slide back and forth to small forward, power forward spot, we did get slowed. I don't think that that's good for this group. We're going to have to play faster. I think DeMar and Zach are two players that in the open floor and open space are really, really terrific offensive players. So we're going to have to play faster. And then I think that when you look at the point guard spot, Kobe played there last year, certainly Lonzo, even Alex Caruso. Lonzo, to me, is as good of an advanced passer as there is. And I think in order to play to his strengths, we got to get out to enable him to get his passing into the game. And he is really, really good at getting it and getting off it and getting it up the floor. And to play to his strengths, it's going to require the other four guys getting out and running. And we've got to be better than we were a year ago, because I do agree with you. We probably changed stylistically, after that trade deadline a little bit. But I think going into this training camp, I think the emphasis has to be on us playing faster.
Just to follow briefly, can you rebound well enough to do that?
Well, I think that it's going to have to be a collective group effort. I do think that the one thing that's encouraging is Lonzo's been a really good rebounding guard. He's got size. DeMar has got size. Zach has got size and length. Patrick's, I think, always been a guy that will continue to be a very, very good rebounder, both offensively and defensively. But we're going to have to do it committee-wise. There's going to be some nights where, that's going to be, a challenge for us. I think every team's got different challenges to face, but that's got to be a collective priority for our team of limiting teams to one shot. But the other thing too, Sam, is with the way the game has gone, the number of threes have gone up, it's not so much the normal rebounds that you kind of expect where, shot goes up and guys just kind of physically knock you out of the way and they come down with it and lay it in. So many of the rebounds now that you give up are long rebounds. And our guards have been, I think, pretty good defensive rebounders. We'll need that from them, with our team.
Bill, this question is for Billy. Marshall Harris of CBS 2. I'm just curious, when you start and you're bringing all these new places in, where do you start defensive-wise, and how much patience do you have to have, not just for yourself, but for the players as they get acclimated to each other?
Well, I think that's where the investment's got to be made. I'm not one of these guys that sits there and say because Zach LaVine's a really good scorer, so's DeMar, so's Vooch, that we'll just be able to score. I think that's going to be a work in progress, but we're going to have to every day put the physical work into defending, because I think if you look at it, whether it's what Sam mentioned about the rebounding, or our ability to, guard from the post or from the perimeter, we're going to have to really make an incredible investment defensively, and it starts at the point of the ball. And I do think that Lonzo and DeMar and Zach have got the ability to be really good on-ball defenders. I do think with a guy like Patrick Williams, he gives you the versatility that we can maybe switch a little bit more than maybe we had in the past. But I do think how well we get back in transition, how well we can guard the basketball one-on-one, those will be critical. But I think there's got to be a real strong investment made there because this team should have really good potential offensively as they hopefully get more and more acquainted with each other. But we're not going to, if you look at any good team, they're always really good on both ends of the floor. And for us, you would look at the team and say, well, these guys have scored. Scoring's going to be easy. I still think they got to learn how to play with each other. But the other point, we got to really make a commitment defensively.
Hi, Paul Sullivan, Tribune. This is for either one. It's been a few years since the Bulls were in the playoffs. Would you like to have this team not just make it, but maybe make a run? Is this, I know you have to mesh and everything, but on paper, is this the kind of team that could do that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us is, it's so hard to sit there and make predictions or project what is or is not going to happen. I just know we have a lot of work ahead of us. I'm excited about the work because I'm excited about the guys. But I think for us right now, we're going to have to see. For me to sit up here and say, okay, we haven't had one practice or one game with each other, and to say, what we're going to look like weeks, months from now is going to be hard to say. But certainly the expectation is you want to be able to, compete at the highest level. You want to be able to make deep runs in the playoffs. And I think, we're trying to continually build and get better from one year to the next. But with all these new faces, I was looking at this several weeks ago. Outside of Patrick and Zach and Kobe, nobody on our team last year started and finished the year on the team. And two of those three guys are injured right now. So I'm excited about it because there's a lot of potential and I think a positiveness to what we can become. But we're going to have to put the work in to become that.
Thanks. Darnell Mayberry with The Athletic. Artūras, where do things stand with the league with the tampering investigation, and do you anticipate having a completion date on that anytime soon?
Well, thank you for your question, but I'll not be able to comment on that.
I got two for Artūras. Lucky you. You've obviously, the Bulls, you may not acknowledge this, but the Bulls have been pretty publicly linked to Lonzo Ball since the trade deadline. Multiple people reported that you guys had talks with the Pelicans at the trade deadline, and then obviously he was a prime target for you in free agency, and you got him. What about him is so attractive to you, and what do you think he can bring to this roster?
Well, I think collectively, by adding Lonzo, what Billy was just saying, we like that he likes to play fast. He likes to advance the ball as a guard. He can be a primary ball handler, or he can play as a secondary ball handler. He improved his three-point shooting. He became close to 40% three-point shooter on 8 attempts, which is, a really good number. So, the versatility, and then again, he can rebound the ball. We were asked about the rebounding. I think we got a couple good guards that actually can rebound the ball. So there were a lot of things that were attracted. Collectively right now, we have a lot of guys that can handle the ball. So as many ball handlers as we can get, that we can be more versatile, that the teams can, struggle defending us and have a one game plan to stop one player. I think the versatility gives us a chance every night.
Follow-up, it's pretty common practice in the NBA for management to kind of, take a victory lap with their free agency hauls, and you guys were one of the most active teams in free agency, and this is the first we've spoken to you since you added those guys. What was the decision-making process there, just out of curiosity?
Well, I think by adding talent, right? So you got to add talent to the roster, but because there were so many changes, that's what's the scary thing is now you got to have to figure it out, the team chemistry and how long it will take. But what Billy mentioned before, the high basketball IQ gives us a better chance to figure it out quicker. I think the guys that we added a lot of basketball IQ. We also added NBA length and athleticism in a lot of positions. So there's a lot of excitement. But again, we're have to see it and prove it every day, and we're going to have to earn respect.
This is for Billy. With Patrick, you alluded to his summer pre-injury. What were the points of emphasis for you guys that you wanted to see from him developmentally? And pre-injury, how were you seeing him progress in those? Obviously, he'll be playing a somewhat new position this year. He played a little floor last year, but taking that on full time. What do you see from him this summer, and how equipped do you see him being to jump into that when he does get back?
Yeah, I thought the biggest thing that I felt like Patrick needed to address this summer was his conditioning. I thought that was a real challenge for him. I think, one, being a young player, the number of possessions in an NBA game, the players that he had to defend on a nightly basis, I think was pretty impressive. I think outside of maybe a hip pointer, he was available for 71 games, and he learned a lot. But you could see it was hard for him to sustain the level of athleticism and explosiveness that you would often see out of him. So he really, I think, had a really good summer, as it related to getting his athleticism and physicality and his speed into the game, where I thought, his rookie year, that was somewhat inconsistent. The unfortunate part is, with the ankle injury, he is able to do some cardio, but it's a little bit different than being out there on the floor. So, but he's worked really hard to get himself back. But I think that was a real point of emphasis of, can you, with his overall just body, size, athleticism, strength, explosiveness, get that into the game more. And the only way you can get that into the game more is by being in incredible shape. And I really thought he made a really positive and strong commitment in that area. And listen, for any player who's played his whole entire rookie year at 19 years old, I think the physical toll of 71 games and what it took, some of it was maybe fatigue, some of it was maybe not being in great shape, some of it was being overwhelming, short. There was a lot of variables, but I think one of the biggest things for him, he'll get better skill-wise, is can he be in elite shape and a great condition forward, because there'll be more asked of him this year. If he is playing more four, he could be in positions where he's switching. He's guarding point guards. He's having to play post defense. He's guarding two guards. He's chasing guys off screens. And it's hard to do those things when you're not in elite shape. And I really felt like he did a great job this summer. And that's why I was so encouraged. And it was disappointing that the injury happened because of the work that he put in.
What was your sales pitch to some of your free agents, and how much was the persona of Zach LaVine's rise in the NBA help with your cause?
Well, I think starting our trade deadline moves, I think that kind of showed that we wanted, that the winning is important. And I think the pitch, this summer to the free agents is we're building something and we want to win. So I think that helped, together with having Zach and having Vooch as two All-Stars already on the roster. So I think, that helped. And it was, we were pleasantly surprised that, a lot of guys wanted to play in Chicago. So it's obviously, says a lot about, Billy and his staff. It has, says a lot about, the players, like Zach, like Vooch, and a lot of players wanted to play with him. So, you know, they contributed to that as well.
Hey, guys, in an effort to keep this thing moving on schedule, we're going to do 2 more. So, Joe, please.
Billy, obviously Zoom doesn't really convey emotion that well, but it seemed after games that you felt like you guys were out tough, that's when you were probably the most pissed in talking to us. How has this team gotten tougher? I mean, when you look around the East, Miami's gotten tougher, the Knicks kind of stayed the same. Are you concerned about that, or do you think the new additions will make you guys just a tougher team physically?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Joe, there's certain players to me that just comes very, very easy. And I do think when our season started off last year, we were probably a little bit young and maybe not fully developed physically. You know, I'm hopeful because of more veteran experience. Like DeMar is a tough guy to me, and the reason I say that is because he gets fouled all the time. You know what I mean? And you got to have a level of toughness to create contact to get fouled. You know, I think our team physically, like even seeing Lonzo defend, he comes across much more of a physical presence on the ball. I don't think that necessarily, like a lot of guys were not necessarily tough as much as I think that they were young and there was youthfulness there. Like, and Patrick was maybe an example that I was talking about. Like, I think there was times he looked just gassed, exhausted, and he couldn't get, you know, he should be a physically tough, but I would not classify being around Patrick as soft. But there was times, I think the conditioning part for us, when you're young like that, you got to be in elite shape because, to your point, the game is so physical. But yeah, I'm hopeful we'll definitely be, you know, physically tougher because I think we're older too. Yep.
For Billy, I know you haven't named the starting lineup yet, but most of us have.
Okay.
For you.
Great.
And I know Patrick is in, and you mentioned the conditioning and ankle. It's unlikely he's going to be in condition coming back again. Who are candidates for that power forward position? DeRozan's, I played it some with San Antonio. What are you thinking about for that to start the season?
I mean, I think, Sam, the biggest thing right now is just getting these guys in practice. Is a good point of to see how Patrick, like this, I think will be a really, really good week, hopefully for Patrick, as he starts to run and do some other things. We'll see how that progresses. But I do think, like you just mentioned, we're going to have to, I think, be somewhat creative in moving players around. You know, you could theoretically move DeMar to the power forward spot, and you can move Caruso into the starting lineup. You know, you can do some things like that. You know, you can, I think, take, you know, some guys that right now they're in camp to even see what a guy like Stanley Johnson can do. You know, he's been in the league for a while. He was a high draft pick, and you know, in some of these preseason games, based on where Patrick's at, you know, you see what he maybe looks like out there. You know, Derek Jones, another guy you can throw out there. So I do think we have some versatility and some flexibility to use. You know, if we want to play, you know, with 4 guards, or maybe it's not 4 guards and it's 3 guards and a forward. But I think for us right now, it's going to be, you know, how does this thing look once training camp starts, and how do these guys, as we mix up teams, how do they look playing with one another?
All right. That's it for these guys right now. Thank you. And we'll have Zach here in a second. If you guys can just be patient, we're going to swap out the mic.